You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Today's topic, photo collage, and we're not talking about scrapbooking here. Joining us in the studio today are two visual artists who fuse photography and collage in non-conventional and often supersized manners. Jennifer Williams is a New York-based visual artist who originally hails from the fertile farmlands of western Pennsylvania. Her photo-based collages often depict urban architecture and cityscapes, but it's the arrangement and placement of these sometimes large-scale and site-specific works that distinguishes them. Whether they be urban neighborhoods, cardboard boxes, or stepladders, it's the collage work and blending of planes and points of view that are so engaging with her work. Jennifer has exhibited her work at the Akron Art Museum, Pittsburgh Center for the Arts, Queens Museum, and many other public art projects. She's also represented by the Robert Mann Gallery right here in New York City. Photographer and artist Tommy Mintz hails from the fertile avenues of Greenwich Village, New York City. Using a software program that he wrote in Python, Tommy creates automated digital collage images that present a randomly selected grouping of images in one chaotic, intriguing, often humorous frame. His work has been exhibited at the Hudson Guild Gallery, the Queens College of Art Center, the Seligman Center, and he was an artist in residence at the Indie Grits Festival in Columbia, South Carolina. Welcome, Jennifer. Welcome, Tommy. We have a whole list of questions here, but the first question I want to ask to both of you, you both are photographers or working in photography-based media. Did you start off taking what we call conventional single-image photographs, or did you pick up a camera and start working specifically with collage as your starting point and what you wanted to do? I'll let you guys fight out for who wants to go first.
I can go first.
Okay.
Well, in the 80s, it was, you got a camera, you took a picture, you made a print in a dark room. And the possibilities beyond that weren't as easy, let's say, because of the work that went into making that photograph. You couldn't do it at home. You couldn't do it on a printer, like a digital printer, whatever. But I will say, when I go back and I look at the images that I made in high school, it started there. I see myself taking photos in the way that I do now, like trying to get everything, like that single frame wasn't enough. So it started there, and then when I got to college, it sort of grew, and then by, I guess, maybe the early 2000s, when digital started to come in and you could print more, not in a dark room, then it grew from there into what it is now.
Were you ever doing just like taking the scissors out and cutting up the photos that you took, and, and taking the 4x6s from the drugstore and doing things with them and chopping them up? And
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. Yeah, Tommy?
And I think I have the same history there with photography as a film and print medium that I cut up and then glued onto board. In the 90s, I got a computer and was scanning my film, scanning prints first before I was able to get a film scanner. I remember the first film scanner I got was a huge breakthrough, and I would develop my film and scan it. And that was a big deal. And then I was working in Corel Photo Paint in the mid-90s and then Photoshop in the late 90s, putting stuff together. And it was a real breakthrough in Photoshop. It had layers and layer masks, and that made things that were previously either very difficult or I'd consider impossible possible.
Yeah.
And so that was what sort of allowed me to really explore this collage that I feel like Jennifer and I both had latent, sort of like you're trying frustratingly with the single frame to get somewhere. I was working with long exposure multi-flash pictures in college where I'd go out at night and set up my camera on a tripod and then position myself in different places and pop the flash and have myself in multiple places on one frame of film. It's like a multiple exposure. So yeah,
so it sounds like the frame was always problematic for you guys. Just trying to fit everything that you wanted to do within one frame, and you looking for ways to to break away from that or break out of that? Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I want that whole experience of being in a space or going somewhere,
Right.
as opposed to it being like, I'm just showing you a portion of it, which is what photography usually does. It kind of curates that way and says, I want you to see this. Whereas I feel like I want you to see everything, but then you're still seeing it the way that I'm showing it to you.
Right.
So.
And also in the case of your work, in some cases, it's in a corner or it's over here, so this idea of everything has then been reduced and reshaped in different ways too, which is part of the evolution of the process, I'm sure. Yeah. Oh, cool.
Something I love about both of your work, I'm a big proponent of cropping. I mean, your camera has a certain aspect ratio, and that's what it is, but it doesn't mean that's the shape of the actual photograph. And I find by cropping, the picture becomes more powerful quite often, okay? And I try to frame as tight as I can. Now, I know when I talk about cropping, there's some purists out there that go ballistic when they hear about that. You guys blow it all out of the water altogether because there is no aspect ratio for what you're doing. It's free form in many ways. Some of your stuff, anyway. So, is that part of it, too, that you just wanted to break away from this constraint of what the camera says, or was that not even part of your issue?
Well, one of the things that I think I did early on as a game in high school was you take a roll of pictures, slightly panning on the first 5, you tilt down a little bit, so you create a contact sheet,
Yes,
sort of a panoramic sort of viewpoint. And so maybe it wasn't the frustration of the too much in the frame that I want to crop out, but I was looking past the frame. Cropping, I don't really think of myself as a cropper, right? I mean, like I want more rather than less, right? When I look at old photographs with the crop marks on them and the red line, the red, paint mark or wax pen.
Wax pencil.
Grease pencil.
Grease pencil, exactly. I always want to see what's left out. I'm really interested in that gap that the photographer. There's some really famous pictures that I feel like are really interesting when you see the uncropped version. There's a picture of Ouija took of some women at the opening to the opera in the height of the Great Depression.
Oh, the heart stairs. I know what you mean. Yes, okay.
And he shot it wide. I mean, he was further away, and you look at the uncropped picture, and it has a very different sense than the intensity of this sort of thing. I'm very interested in that space that's in the city. That's you have these waves of crowds and empty space, and a lot of time you crop out that empty space in a picture. But I'm interested in that space.
Interesting. And are you guys okay with the definitions of collages? And I kind of want to preface that by saying your work, obviously there's a lot of randomness and things that you're not controlling that are coming in. And yours seems to be the opposite. It seems very like hyper-controlled in the sense that you really want to make sure everything is in its right place to give you something that you're going to create. Is collage okay with you? Is that what you call it? Is there a room for all of these opposites within collage?
It's funny because this is a discussion that comes up often, like what is collage?
Right.
One of the questions is collage something that happens as a found medium? So is it defined by the fact that they're not your photos? It's something that's found, or it's text or whatever. But if you're actually taking the images and they're your images and they're photographs, then is it still collage?
Do you think that changes the definition, whether it's found imagery or stuff that you specifically captured rather than just...
It's a conversation.
Okay. For me, it didn't cross my mind.
Right.
That actually was one of my next questions. Do you take all the photos, and is it necessary for your process that you have to start there?
Yeah, it is. There was one thing that I did years ago that someone asked me to do, and I wasn't in the city, and someone else took the photos, and it was just impossible to make something out of it because I wasn't there walking around looking at things, taking those pictures. Even if they looked exactly identical, it's like I wasn't having the experience of going through the motions. Right. And because of that, I didn't have any connections to it. Right. So I think that's maybe, with the found imagery or the imagery that someone has taken, it's just sort of like where you as the artist is sort of placed within that. Yeah,
imagine if you're capturing your own, you have more control because you have one element, and then when you're going for the next element, you know where it's going to be going because you have an idea what it. Otherwise, you're at the mercy of whatever anybody else had seen and captured.
Right, exactly.
And do you start, does your process start with that walk around the neighborhood? Are you thinking as you're shooting and you're looking at angles of buildings, okay, this I can do this with later, or do you just kind of reapproach it after you've done all the shooting?
No, I think it starts as I'm walking around. I mean, it's kind of like someone asked me to do something and I go visit the space.
Right.
That's the beginning of it. And so the journey of going there, walking to the gallery or room or, whatever it is, and then like looking around as I go, I'm kind of pulling things out and trying to figure out like, what am I going to do with this? And then it depends on how much time. Like if it's here in New York, then I can go whenever I want and kind of look at it and do some research and go back. But if it's somewhere else, then I really have to be present and take it in, go back to the studio, do a bunch of research, and then when I'm there shooting, like just shoot everything as much as possible and kind of bring it back. And then I'm like, okay, what do I have? What do I do with this?
And when it's like a site-specific place, and let's say out of New York, different from the urban architecture, can you say to yourself what it is that you want to do with that space? Like how you want to reinterpret it with what you're going to take? Is that always kind of clear?
It usually does kind of start with somewhere that has undergone or is in the process of undergoing change. So it does repeat itself kind of no matter where. I mean, I haven't done, a farm, but there still might be something within that where it would still be like, this is what's happening right now. And, what is sort of changing everything around it. And these are the things that are there. And so it kind of like, you'd mentioned in those questions something about documentation. It's documentation of a moment. And then that way it is photography, stopping time, saying this is what's going on right now. And this is the case of, this is sort of how everything is laid out and where it's going and where it's been.
Yeah, I had this idea that in some cases, especially with the urban stuff, it's this idea of taking what's outside and in, of course, reforming it and giving it a different thing. But yeah, trying to bring what's outside in, whether that's internally here or internally into a space, So, yeah. And Tommy, that kind of gets a little bit to what I read of a quote of yours, which is, I'm interested in this rapid pace of construction, displacement, and efforts of preservation in the physical world as well as in the digital world, right?
Yeah, I see that in Jennifer's work a lot, this idea of this rapidness of change that we're seeing, an explosion of building and sort of forgetting of what was there before in a way that I think is very sort of, it hits an emotional note for me. It's very sad. It's very poignant in a way too, even if it's like, wow, celebratory. Look at all this shiny new stuff. Right. I feel kind of saddened by all of it too. And I feel like, how do you express both those things? How do you show that? And Jennifer's work does that, I think, very effectively. I'm not sure if you feel that also, but I certainly get a sense of that poignancy of this moment of, exuberant construction.
Yeah, I mean, I hopefully that's a goal. So thank you. That it isn't. Yeah, it's all of that is in there. Even though, it's not sort of spelled out on a plaque next to it, but that just by looking at it, you can.
It'd be so much easier if it was, right? Just all written there for us.
Yeah. But that's the whole point. It's a visual thing, and you're supposed to take away those feelings about it from there.
Yeah. And it's interesting the change. We're all in the city here, and this particular neighborhood has gone through crazy change in the past few years with the High Line and all these explosions of construction in Hudson Yards. And one of the things that we've noticed around here is that the light has changed entirely. There are times, I've been noticing now that all these zillion-story buildings have shot up around us. There are now shadows across the streets right in front of the building that were never there before. At the same time, there are also beams of light shooting around from all of these glass structures. Different times of day, there are cross beams of light. So it's changed, and there's some old stuff that I missed that was wonderful, but there's some new dynamics, and it's evolving. It doesn't stand still. So
I have kind of an art history question, which kind of sprang from what you were saying, Jennifer. And I wanted to ask: do you feel any ties, or both of you, to your work to kind of other explorations of the city? We were looking today at some of Danny Lyon's The Destruction of Lower Manhattan. But now that we're talking about shiny and new, I was thinking of like Charles Sheeler and some of these works that were kind of celebrating this kind of construction. So do you feel any of those kind of documents are close to what you're doing or in the same tradition?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, which one? I'm just kidding.
Sort of all of them. It's kind of taking from all of that and sort of squishing it together, hopefully, and representing it in a...
Because you have both. You have, the angles that you create kind of lend itself to this kind of the glory of the buildings.
The whole idea of it being everything, even if it's like, and this, I guess, is what a collage element is, but even if you can't see every building, in some of the things, like they're there, they're just underneath something else. So like I did this piece in Virginia for Virginia Tech of Blacksburg, which is a tiny little town. It has a grid of 16 squares. And every building within there is on there. It's just some of them are kind of like stacked on top of each other.
Yes, I was looking at that image.
Yeah.
So that was really important for once people were looking at it and they learned about that, they're like, wow, you know.
And the Newburgh one, for example, does that have every building in the downtown or in
On
Newburgh?
Liberty Street,
Which
I
is
think.
okay.
Yeah, which is like the longest street in Newburgh, and it has.
I was looking at that image a lot. Yeah.
And how did you decide then that it should go on the side of a building? Was that part of it from the beginning, or
That was from the beginning. Yeah, I was approached by this woman who's a curator up there, who's been doing a lot of projects, and she was like, "I have this side of a building. Can you do something with it?"
Right.
And so that was months and months of figuring out what that could be, how it could stay there, but then come off again, and how to get it up.
Actually,
Yeah, how permanent was that particular piece? And the reason why I'm asking is that, first of all, to go outside, you're now printing on, is it safe to assume signage material, like a large printer with billboard media?
Well,
Or no?
it ended up being the same printer I always use, which is a 24-inch Epson.
Yeah.
And
But the media is for outdoors,
the
correct?
media was for it was a little of both. So the thing that stuck to the bricks was for outdoors, and then on top of that was something else stuck on that, and then it was coated with an outdoor to save money.
protect something to
Okay.
protect it.
Now, but that's what leads me to my next thing, is that you're doing this representation of what is now and things that are vanishing, okay?
Right.
That exterior piece, if it's left there, will also go away in time.
Right. Yeah.
It's also very temporary unless you take it off and put it inside where it's safe.
Right.
Was that part of your intention also? Is that...
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was up for the summer, and it actually came down that October.
Oh, okay.
So
Now, what happens with most of your stuff that are site specific after the fact?
most of it I can save it and use it again.
Okay.
Yeah. 3 or 4 times,
And
which is great.
Does it sell? I mean, ones that are in galleries that are a site-specific corner piece, you'll take it down and it's available for sale in that sense to put someplace else?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it comes in pieces. It's sort of like an IKEA setup where I have instructions.
You got one of
and,
those
like,
those little L-shaped wrenches that comes with it?
well, not yeah. I don't need that, but yeah, there is an instruction sheet with like numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it comes with like a sketch, and I mean, people who buy it can interpret it however they wish, but that's the general idea. And then if a piece gets if it's on the floor and it gets messed up or something, they can, talk to the gallery and we can make a new one.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I can save them.
Do you do more than one at times?
Usually there's just one,
just
and
the
then, I mean, if something gets sold, I print it new, of
Okay,
course.
I see.
It
I
gets
see.
packaged.
So can you kind of walk us through a little bit, like even starting with what camera you use when you're shooting, and then I assume that most of the organization and construction is done on the computer.
Yeah.
And then maybe later, you tell me.
Yep, sure. I still have a Canon Mark II.
Okay, 5D Mark II.
Yeah, I thought about buying something new, and it does what I need it to do. Like I rented a 5DS this summer, and it was beautiful and wonderful. But then the files are so big, because I'm smushing everything together. The files just become gigantic. So.
It probably doesn't make a big difference in the final product when you have something so huge
Right.
You don't need all that detail with a wall-size installation. It's like a billboard. You can walk up to it. The dots are like the size of softballs.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. So I just have that, and then I guess it's just the 24 to 105 lens that we're going. I'm usually on wide angle anyway, and yeah, I walk around a neighborhood. It takes an hour or two. I see what I have. If I need to go back, I go back again, and then I have to sort through everything, cut out the buildings that are important, and then that starts the process of how things go together. Because usually it has to do with this mapping, which I think you'd mentioned in the questions. So it is literally like I came out here and then I finished over there. Though some of them now are more just like, this is the biggest building, these are the smallest buildings, and so it kind of.
But that's always part of the process, the actual physical location of the buildings in relationship to where they're placed in your piece. Right?
Yeah. Because I mean, that's part of the walking experience. I want it to be something that you can just like pop out of the subway and then you're looking up and you're like, oh, that was that was in that thing I saw. You know, it isn't that I'm like in a helicopter or I'm on the top of some building or I have special access to something. This is all about like you're just walking down the street and there's this 100-story building and it's there in front of you and I'm showing it to you in you know the way that I am. So yeah, and then they get cut out and they get turned into some sort of composition. And to your question about cropping, it's interesting because it kind of goes with those compositions. I like rectangles, so it's usually something will be formed within a rectangle that has positive and negative space,
Right.
And so that's how it sort of becomes a shape. I mean, the shape is based on the walk as well, but it's cropped and framed in that way. And then that, it depends on where it's going. Sometimes I make a model of the space and then I'll print a little tiny one out and kind of stick it in there. And you can stick your iPhone in there and it looks a lot like what it's going to look like in real life. So
do you let yourself play a little bit, or are you very strict in the sense that, okay, every building has to be in there and it has to follow the pattern, or if for some visual reason it doesn't work, you're okay to just chuck it?
I try to be pretty strict. It's hard to take something out. I would feel bad about it. Yeah. Because it's there. That's like, I know it's there. It's going to be, I'm going to walk past it. I'm going to be like, I'm sorry. you know, you didn't make it at the cut. But I am.
If you were born in New York, you wouldn't care about that. That's the difference.
That's why we like people not from New York.
Yeah.
They do care.
Yeah. But yeah, there are these rules. And then just from, reading about how neighbors have changed or the evolution of things and like zoning laws, you can kind of pick out which things are more or less important and focus on those.
And is it kind of final once it's printed out of the computer in the sense that
Yeah.
You don't grab some scissors at the end and
No.
You'd mentioned usually you shoot with a wide angle. Do you change the focal length? Because obviously a wide angle is going to bend a building or it'll do some kind of distortion.
A lot of keystoning stuff.
Is that an issue, or do you like that, or sometimes you'll use a different focal length because you don't want that, or do you shoot them all the same?
Well, this is the beauty of Photoshop, because I mean, it's like I'll shoot like 10 images of one building and then stick it into RAW and do the lens corrections and then do the photo merge and then do, more lens corrections. And then, so I'm really kind of, and I think I was doing that many manipulations, but I think I do. I think I really kind of shape it into my memory of looking at it.
Right.
So yeah, often things are keystoned because they're giant.
Right.
But there's there's a limit to like what feels real and what is just
Sometimes a corrected building looks fake.
Yeah.
Because it is fudged. And sometimes you to just back off a little bit and let a little bit of keystoning set in actually makes it easier in the eye and more believable. You just get past it.
Yeah.
It happens.
And Photoshop is the program you use?
Yeah.
Pretty much everything?
Yeah.
And can you tell us what Phototex is?
Yeah, Phototex is it's basically like a repositionable wallpaper inkjet media that is made out of fabric. It has has a weave to it.
Oh, it does. Okay.
So which is one of the reasons it's reusable. Like you can just peel it off and it doesn't stretch the way some of the other ones do. And it's really resilient.
Yeah. And let's say if you want to divide the process in three, you have the shooting, then you have the work on the computer and the installation. How long could a shoot take? Could it just be one pass? Could one walk down the street? Yeah.
If I'm paying attention.
Okay. And then a lot of time on the computer. And
a lot of time on the computer, and then everything gets printed out and then cut out as individual pieces again. So then that's resizing, printing, tiling, cutting out, and then
Jason had mentioned that one of, and sorry, Tommy, second half of the show is all yours, buddy.
I was actually hoping to ask Jennifer some questions. I want to get in on this by asking questions.
Notes.
Let me mention this because Jason was saying, this looks like some graffiti, and obviously some of the work that you did earlier, with the wheat paste on graffiti.
Yeah.
Is that conscious? The kind of the shapes that you ultimately get with these buildings do have a sense of a feel like graffiti. Is that?
I don't know if it's like overtly conscious, but I definitely am clued into when I see things, especially when I see graffiti that goes over like windows or doors, things that just sort of like block out the building itself or like the functionality of it. Like that's really interesting to me and how organic it can be. So I do think there is a relationship, especially when things get placed outside. But yeah.
I have one more question along the lines of creating what you do create. Have you learned, after doing so many, I guess we'll call them tricks, to create a three-dimensionality or to create something that, out of the layering and the shaping? Is there any kind of, I guess tricks is not the right word, but, is there a kind of a method that you've seen that works better than others when it comes to creating that look? And can you talk about that a bit? Or is it just something that you eye again? And
it's really just something that I think it's it's funny because when you see it small, you can kind of like pick out parts and be like, okay, that needs to be a little darker and that needs to be a little lighter, and then just treating it as if it, because it is sort of this composition in the computer, so treating it as a whole, like if you were in the dark room, you can burn and dodge, and,
right.
So it is starting with that, and then transferring that to each individual piece. And when it's in the gallery, you can light it.
Right.
So that, outdoors you can't, but that makes a huge difference.
And that's a big part of it then too? You go back and use the lighting of the space and all. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question
Please.
about your process? So when you're composing, are you composing each cutout in one big Photoshop document?
Yes.
Interesting. So you put them all into something that's gigabytes large in the end? And are you having issues with large files? Because you're making huge things.
Yeah. I usually I'll scale them down. And then I have like a mini version.
Interesting.
And,
so that doesn't make your computer slow down so much.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I can just go in, and when I know how big I want it to be in the space, I can scale.
Cool.
Yeah.
And when does that decision come in? The how big it will be in the space?
Later.
Later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk about the ladders a little bit? Because we were looking at those, and I guess this is another question, because how in that the ladder shows that you've done, what is a real ladder in there? Anything?
No.
I didn't think so. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I looked like it was, but I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, I was actually curious about that myself.
Yeah. No, nothing is real. Only when I'm hanging it, there, of course, is a ladder. And then that gets really funny because but no, they're all flat.
It's total two-dimensional.
Yeah. Especially when you rephotograph it, then they look real.
Incredibly real.
But even when you walk into the space, some of them, depending on the angle that they're on, they look sort of real. So.
And how much time and experience did it take to kind of create that sense? Is that something that you've been working on and trying to perfect, and at one point, it just doesn't look real, and then you went back and did it again? And
weirdly, it always looked real.
Okay.
Yeah. They started because, whenever I started using phototext and I was doing things that weren't specifically city-based, it was a project that had to do with objects within the gallery, and one of them was a ladder. And so the ladder got put into the piece, and the ladder was partially on the floor, and it really just looked so real. And then I did another piece, and another ladder got put in there for the same reasons, and then it was just like, okay, wait, maybe this is just all about ladders, because I needed something that I could do at short notice. I couldn't always spend months researching, and if someone's like, would you like to do a show here in a month?
Right.
Okay. So that's where those came from, and they just sort of got distilled. And you're in galleries, you're in studios, you're in wherever. There's always a ladder somewhere. So it was like, I will start just gathering these and make something out of it. So then it became about this idea of photography lying, basically. Yeah. You could use it to show you something that looks real, but then it's not real. And
do you still consider that collage? For the sake of this conversation,
I guess it's more installation.
Yeah.
Because they don't usually go over top of each other. They're kind of locked together. So it becomes more sculptural.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Cool.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, more with Jennifer Williams and Tommy Mintz. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BHPhotoVideo, #BHPhotoPodcast.
Okay, we are back with a whole bunch of follow-up questions since we took our last break. You had just mentioned, Jen, that we were talking about collage, and you mentioned overlapping. Does a collage have to be overlapping images, or can you still identify collage as images that butt up together and not necessarily overlap? I never thought there would be a difference, but you just said something. I'm just wondering how you're defining it.
I would define it as things that go on top of each other.
That overlap.
Yeah.
So if they just butt up against each other, that doesn't qualify.
No, I think that's just mounting.
Oh.
But then if you like paint on top of that, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I feel like it's something that has to go on top of each other. Like it has to be like pieces that are stacked.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's just me.
Have you blended in non-photographic things into these works at all, or in other works? I mean, I know you've done photos of cardboard and other things, but when it comes to the final piece, it's always photographic.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
And how long, I know there are different sizes, and how would you say long is the process, at least the process of creating it on the computer?
Oh, depends on how crazy I'm being.
Yeah.
I at least like a week, because I need to put everything together, kind of play with it for a while, step away, look at it, step away, and turn it around. Flip it, it takes
It takes a while.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right, Tommy, I got a couple of questions for you. More than a few.
Well, let's kind of enter it by just clarifying a little bit that Tommy's work is done on a system that he had a hand in creating, or at least the program anyway, and they're digital, randomly generated images to some degree. We want to actually get into the details, but
but there's one thing I wanted to hit on before that.
Go for
We're
it.
not going to lose down because that's a whole other topic altogether. You did a series of photographs where you had like a whole bunch of storefronts and then apartments on top of it with
the windows.
The windows.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it. First of all, it's a great concept because the buildings, the outside, the exteriors are all daylight, obviously, and then you had a photograph at night to get the windows. Am I correct about that?
Those were all
What's the
found
story?
images.
Are they?
So when Flickr first came out online, there's this amazing sort of dam bursting of people showing pictures of their lives. It was before cell phones, right? And self-obsession that we get bombarded with now. But I was really fascinated by looking into other people's lives. I'm kind of a voyeur as a photographer, and looking into windows as I walk down the street, and would love to imagine what's going on inside
So
there.
none of those interiors belong in those exteriors.
No,
and those
they're
people.
all found pictures.
Wow.
I just did a Flickr search for my living room or my.
That's a lot
apartment.
easier than knocking on doors and asking permission. I figured somebody had to say, you ain't coming to my place. You ain't
Well, one of my favorite artists, Gail Albert Halaban, does exactly that, right? I don't know what she calls her series of window views, where she's looking across the city at windows, and she has a flash set up in somebody else's apartment that she remote triggers.
Oh, wow.
She goes around leaving notes under people's doors, asking if they'd like to participate, and she puts a flash in there, and she'll take pictures whenever she
wants to.
Yeah,
Whenever she wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's really interesting.
Interesting.
That's terrific.
Interesting. Oh, I didn't know that work. Yeah. I wanted to read this quote that came as a description of Jennifer's work, and I thought it was actually might fit you a little bit, where it says, like out-of-control software programs jumping back and forth between points of view, the ... the perspectives twist before our eyes. So talk us through a little bit your process.
Sure. So
Please.
thank you. Yeah. So the window project is different. I went around just photographing a strip of buildings. As I walked down the street, very much like a Druchet or going down the Sunset Strip. What I'm doing now currently is I stay in one place and take a sequence of images, and then run that sequence through a program I wrote. And the program detects areas of change. Anything that's moved, any light that's shifted gets read as a different pixel value.
So your camera
and
is on
added
is fixed, is on a tripod.
So yes, sometimes. Most of the time, I've been using what's called the Nodal Ninja, which is a tripod attachment that allows me to make a panoramic, maintaining the nodal point of my camera to reduce parallax.
Right.
And so my camera is generally on that, although sometimes I hand hold it and I get very different effects of edges, which I enjoy at points, but it makes it much harder and longer to sort of align my pictures enough in Photoshop.
That's
which
why I
had
was
to do
asking if it
then.
was on a stable platform or not.
So when it's on a stable platform, I can just run it straight through my
Right.
software. If it's not, I then have a process where I start. Well, actually, really now I have been shooting raw and running everything through Lightroom, processing it, and then running it through my software. Or in the interim, in Photoshop, I'll do a layer alignment where I change the blending mode of a top layer and move it and rotate it very slightly so that it aligns as well as it can. And there are always differences, of course, and that's what makes the collage in the software program, the change. So yeah, there's the shooting, which I sort of would prefer to spend much more time doing, and this process was something I imagined I'd do on the street using computers outdoors, because I love working on a computer, but I really don't like sitting inside. So I started this project. I thought of it years and years ago as a graduate school project to install in a bus shelter when I was waiting for the bus in Jamaica, Queens, to have a little camera installed, and instead of the advertisement, have a screen, which we now have, unfortunately, everywhere, and have pictures of the people in the bus shelter appear on the screen, and they could interact with themselves in this growing collage of themselves over time, waiting for the bus. And well, thanks. And I went around. I thought my programmer friends would think it was a good idea, but nobody had the time to work with me on this. This is 2005, I guess, and then 2013, the Raspberry Pi computer was released, which is a very welcoming platform for first-time developers. There's sort of everything's baked in. If you want to work with Python, it's there. If you want to work with C, it's there. If you want to just do drag-and-drop programming with Scratch, it's there in the operating system. And so I started with that. I connected the Raspberry Pi computer to a webcam and actually had a show kind of based on that very low resolution camera that I was using then. It was like 640 by 480 pixels. And it made collages and made them quickly. And it was really fun, but it wasn't something that I got a lot of information sort of to describe the world outside. And as I started using higher resolution cameras, the Raspberry Pi computer started being too slow. So I had to use a more powerful computer. And of course, now I'm spending a lot of time indoors just processing these images with the same program that was written in Python for the Raspberry Pi, now sort of iterated to run on a MacBook,
And how many photos will you take or how many in a setting or of a scene?
About 36.
Okay.
Got a roll.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
And the format camera?
So I started with the webcam, and then I was using a Raspberry Pi 5 megapixel, and then they had an 8 megapixel camera that was attached via a ribbon cable to the computer itself. And then I started shooting with my Canon 5D Mark I. Right, and which I have in my bag still. And now and then I started renting different cameras. I tried the Sony A7R III, which was beautiful, and the Canon 5DS I rented also, which was beautiful. And then I tried the Sigma DP2 Quattro, which is kind of a funny camera, and I really enjoy it. So I got one of those, and I've been using that recently. So we joke about Sigma shooters, but yeah, I mean, I'm really
You're not
enjoying
alone there.
it.
There are
So-
the people that are really into that cameras.
Yeah.
But the reason why I asked you that is because you actually said take about 36 pictures, a roll.
Well, it's a sort of
I know, but
Yeah.
I caught
a sense
that
of
one.
completion, that we go back to.
And is it still where the computer is connected, or now that's operation is separate?
So I went through a number of iterations of one of the problems with having a computer connected in the field is you're always futzing with the computer. You're sort of paying attention to the computer, and also things run out of batteries very quickly. Screens take up a lot of power.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was first. I was using an HDMI screen that had a Nikon battery that would power it. Marshall screen.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. I connected that to my Raspberry Pi and had a keyboard that I would then control the computer with, connected via Bluetooth outdoors. And then I on one iteration, when the Raspberry Pi got fast enough and actually had Bluetooth and Wi-Fi built in, I then used remote desktop software and an iPad mini that I carried around with me and would control my computer via the iPad mini screen. There are all sorts of headaches, with Wi-Fi connections and things going up, kind of working when you want them to at that right moment. And so at this point, I've reduced, and I'm just sitting there with a cable release, taking pictures, looking at what's going on around me, and being in that moment. And then I know what I'm going to process. It helped in the beginning to have the process happening, to understand what's going to appear, what's going to be left out, where are these interesting moments going to occur.
And was any of that, could you predict any of that? Could you control any of that? Or was that just something that the program did for you?
It's something that I don't control. I mean, I wrote the program and I can change the code to change
but
how
image
it's
per
going to...
image, though, no.
No, I'm not changing the code image per image. And I can anticipate it a little bit at this point, but it continues to surprise me, and I love that surprise. I find new things later in the picture process, in the image making process.
And your settings when you're shooting are all the same? It's always the exposure time and the f-stops are all for each shot within that 36, let's say? Or
so
do you...
I do vary them, and one of the, not to plug Lightroom here, but there's a setting that is Control Shift M. It's balance. It's when you sync all photos for the exposure, overall exposure. It does some algorithmic understanding of
Adobe Voodoo.
Adobe Voodoo, and it works quite well and allows me to change my settings. But generally, I do shoot ISO 100, RAW, 1/125th of a second, and whatever aperture.
And you take a street photographer's kind of attitude toward what you're looking at and trying to get, whatever's going on the edges of the frame and get. How do you approach it in that sense?
I mean, I think of myself as somewhat of a street photographer, but also somewhat of a landscape photographer. I mean, I'm looking at the space around and the buildings and what's going on with the light striking the buildings, as well as the people moving through the space. So, I do like to have people coming in the edge of the frame, like a street photo, or sort of juxtapositions of people sort of passing each other and doing different things in the moment there. So I do approach it as a street photographer. I think a lot of, I feel like there's a long history of street photography that I like to think is continuing, not just in the direct street photography, going out and, sort of standing there taking pictures, but sort of documenting things in ways that new technology allows for. And I'm really fascinated by all the cameras that are just out there taking pictures all the time. The new Wi-Fi kiosks running up and down the avenues in Manhattan now all have cameras that are taking pictures, actually. And, I'd love to
get access to them.
Yeah, get access to those and use them for street photography, right? That's
totally.
Wonderful moments occur.
So other than, the decisions you're making on the street, where do you feel that you're having the most influence on the final product? Like, other than you wrote the program, of course, you're snapping the images, and then the program does its thing, and then where do you come in after that? Like, what's the next steps?
So I sit there running the program at this point, and one of the things that I struggle with is to keep it's kind of boring. I don't like sitting in front of the computer doing repetitive tasks. So I've been doing some things to amuse myself in the process, and as I sort of choose which picture, the sequence of the images to run through the software or position the images. So
you'll resequence what you shot as you put it in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there sliders involved, like for opacity? Because the images blend, come and go. So it's fixed.
So the software, and one of the things that's really boring is I'm doing this all through Terminal. In the Mac OS, you have the ability to just type in commands and run those commands. And so I'm doing it through that and then seeing the result. And in order to amuse myself, recently I've been trying to live stream like my studio practice over Twitch, or YouTube Live, which are
Okay.
these gamer
Mhm.
platforms.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm trying to like gamify it a little
Oh,
bit.
interesting.
Where I'm sort of like playing, like, hey, how can I have fun at the computer? Which
And
is
are you
kind of
getting
a
some
drudge,
feedback as you're doing that, or is there anyone else
I
involved?
haven't had
No.
many viewers.
No.
No, but some
You guys
guy with
hear
a
that?
tank attacked him, though.
No, but people, let's find him and follow him. All right, let's mess with this process. All right, cool. But anyway, continue. So, well, quick question: like, at least when you were initially doing this, how long was the time for the program to do its thing after the 36, let's say, were shot?
Right. So that's one of the reasons why I switched to a more powerful computer. As I increased the resolution, the
The
process
rendering time probably went through the roof,
through
right?
the roof. So it used to be half a second, and then a second, and then a minute. And once I got to that minute and process per frame, I said I can't sit here and wait for it to do its thing anymore. And that was on the Raspberry Pi. So now I'm running a much faster processor in my MacBook, and it's quite quick. Maybe it's 15 seconds per frame, 10 seconds per frame, depending on the resolution. It is different depending on the camera still. And to answer your question, I do run the images through the software, and then I go back into Photoshop, and if I'm doing a panoramic, I'll put those frames together, place them next to each other in Photoshop, either overlapping or placing them next to one another, changing the angle. Sometimes they're stretching, skewing, and doing that kind of thing once again after the program has done its thing. And I choose my favorite iteration. It gives me an iteration per shot, and I might like one, sort of in the middle, and then it gets worse. So sometimes that it peaks in my view.
And do they change drastically, or is it just kind of a minor changes and reduction, not reductions, but
it's an addition
gradual
or a
falling off
reduction.
or something.
Maybe
Okay.
something I enjoyed disappeared that I was, sort of seeing there, and then
That's
it's
the
not
fun
the same
part.
with
Though. That seems to be the
That is
thrill,
the fun
right?
part. Yeah, when we get to that.
Yeah, interesting, cool. And now you're going to be printing. That's what is it going to be? I know you have a show coming up, and we can talk about it at the end. But the ultimate format for these will be what now?
Yeah, so I've been printing on metal. There's the dye sublimation direct onto metal process, which are really cool. I mean, really beautiful result that has the metal as the sort of paper color, where you don't sort of coat the metal, but instead you have
That's your base. Your base white is now
base silver.
metal.
Yeah.
Silver,
and I feel like that has a really interesting digital feel, which sort of echoes the digital process and the digital sense that I'm bringing into this as an artist.
Yeah. Did you coin the phrase, the ADPC or automated? No, sorry.
Goodness.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Did you? Or no?
Automated digital photo collage. Something like, how do you describe a process? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So it was always collage for you. It was always part of it.
It's collage, montage. I mean, I was interested in this conversation
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
having
please, yeah,
about
yeah.
like does it have
What's
to
your take on
overlap
it?
or not? And I agree. I think if it's next to one another, maybe if I'm thinking of Ray Metzger's work, where he has two pictures juxtaposed,
right.
And I don't consider those collages. He does collage where he'll overlap, many pictures but the pictures that are butting up one against one another are either diptychs or triptychs or something different.
Points taken.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Okay. And this was hinted at a little bit earlier, but within the different genres of photography and the history of at least New York photography, there's always a little bit of urban activism. Do you guys feel that that's part of your work, commenting on gentrification and the changes that we see in the city? And obviously there's good, but also what we're losing. Is that kind of
You
important?
editorializing?
Yes. Is there an activism, I guess? Maybe not, that's a strong word, but,
Right, yeah.
a comment on this.
I mean, I feel like it's there if you want to see it, but I'm not seeing it in such a loud way, I suppose, because part of me is like I say, I'm like documenting a thing that is happening. So it's already happening.
And you're coming from, if I'm not mistaken, from farmlands. Is that true? I mean, kind of?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I grew up far enough outside of Pittsburgh that it was sort of right on the edge. I mean, I worked on a farm in high school picking strawberries.
Okay. All right.
But it was a maybe 30-minute drive into Pittsburgh, which in the 80s was not a great place to be. It was falling apart. Right. So, there's been a huge transformation there, not at the scale that's happened here, but that whole sense of change, I think, growing up somewhere that was sort of dying and then, moving here and kind of watching this place.
Reinvent itself
yeah,
again.
Constantly reinventing
yeah, it's constantly,
itself.
yeah.
And Tommy, coming from the land of Jane Jacobs and the village and this area, I know it's always something that you're keenly aware of, but how do you feel about your work in that relation?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think of Jane Jacobs as one of these formative sort of thinkers in my understanding of the city, and this ideal of a vibrant city and her sort of sense of what makes a vibrant city and the characters and the blocks are what attract me as a photographer. And I do think I'm looking for those places and maybe looking for the loss of those places in some of my photographs too. 33rd and 10th I was photographing over sort of what's going on. It's really amazing when you have these spaces that have just been wiped clean.
I just recently found some transparencies. I'm in the midst of converting a bunch of stuff from analog to digital, and like little storefronts and buildings and facades from the West Side Highway and all around over here that gone, and it's not that long ago.
Not at all.
I got them though.
Yeah, and it's one of those powers of photography, I think, to help us understand the change that we forget normally, and that forgetting, I think, is something I'm very interested in. That sense of, oh, that was there. What's there now? I can't remember. And that dissolving of memory is something that I try to touch on in my work. So yeah, I do think it's very activist in that way. Telling people.
I know some pictures that I find to be tremendously powerful. Looking back on New York City pictures, photographs taken in the late '60s, early '70s, when before Battery Park City was built. Essentially, it was all the sand and stone that they dug out to build the World Trade Center. And they built, it was like, I don't know how many acres of new land, but it was just laying there on the southern tip of Manhattan. People just hanging out. There was like a giant beach. And New York City was behind it. Now it's just all monstrous buildings. That's all history. Yeah. And it was a short sliver of time that existed. And you look at those pictures and boom, there it is. It's great.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking of those dandelion photos too, and that destruction, which is, that's echoed now. That's 50 years ago. That's like late 60s, that series. And the same thing's happening now in another part of the city. You know?
And we just witnessed it right here in this neighborhood in the past 3 or 4 years.
Another series that caught my attention is WNYC had this series on the Jazz Loft, 821 6th Avenue.
I saw you.
And it's this old building right in the middle of these giant hotels that are shooting up along 6th Avenue and upper 20s. And it's these moments where you just see what's left, these little moments that are
little
left.
nuggets.
Now, do you think the process that you're doing would work? I've seen a few of your photos of flowers and landscapes outside of the city, but do you feel it's kind of part and parcel of the cityscape?
So the images that are of botanical specimens grew out of my photographs, actually, of 28th Street between 6th and 7th Avenue is this flower district.
The flower district, it's a great place.
It is. It's magical. And I realized that I was enjoying taking pictures of flowers. What am I going to do? And when you take a sequence of pictures of a flower in the breeze, actually, and then run it through this collaging algorithm that I use, it creates a very interesting composition of shapes. And I don't know if that is urban in a sense, but it does have that same energy of motion, time portrayed in a flat image. And it's a time lapse in a sense the other pictures are also.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that we didn't talk about, the time element in this. That's all. I have nothing else to say, but thanks for bringing it up.
Oh, sure.
No, also, you just mentioned, we're talking about change in cities, and it's like cities and urban environments are not only just giant buildings, sometimes they're tiny little things along the sidewalk.
Absolutely.
That we just pass by zillions of times and never even notice. It's scale and perspective, so that's another big factor in this whole thing.
Cool.
Jennifer, first of all, 2 things. Any projects coming up, any installations, any shows, and where can people find your work?
So right now there's one thing up at the Children's Museum of Manhattan.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
There's a show called Artists and You that they actually have 4 artists there doing residencies, I think for 3-month slots. And through the program, there's other works that are up for the duration of the show. I don't know how much longer it's going to be up for, but it's already been up for like 6 months, and they have a ton of like big installation-y kind of things that have to do with the programming of the artists that are there. So so that's there for a while, and the piece that's there is part of this New York City of Tomorrow project that I started at the Queens Museum.
Yes. Yeah.
So that I'm waiting to hear back about stuff from some grants to continue by doing a project that talks about Hudson Yards and Flushing, Queens. Because they're like
Ends of the
both
seven,
the
yeah.
ends of the
Yeah.
seven, yeah.
Yeah.
And it would be outdoors, and it's going to be in Flushing,
Okay.
so to kind of take Manhattan out.
Don't you have a few works that are permanently displayed? or
There's
no?
one that's up at
People
the
to visit?
Foundation Center
Okay. can you-
downtown, but yeah, it's not in the public area.
Oh,
But I
okay.
think you can kind of call them up and be like, hey, can we see Jen's thing?
Yeah.
Just say Jennifer sent you,
Yeah.
and you get right
Totally.
through
Yeah.
Totally.
with lunch.
And any future projects that are going in any different directions at the time being? or-
Yes.
Yeah. Do tell.
Yeah, I started this project this summer photographing these tools that my grandfather either used or made.
Wonderful.
Coming from a place, this very sort of rural place in Pennsylvania. So I'm photographing them with a 4x5 with a digital back. It's a whole thing, and they're turning into palladium prints.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Nice.
That should be nice.
yeah. So that was a whole kind of. I'm still conceptualizing how to sort of talk about it, but it's kind of going back to my roots and seeing where my aesthetic comes from. Because I mean, these things that he made weren't meant to be beautiful, but they are,
Right.
and they're just made out of parts that were lying around because he didn't have money to buy things and like
great.
to build. Yeah.
Are you going to be doing your own palladium printing, or are you going to?
Yeah.
That's great. So that's
Yeah.
going to be a whole other direction for you. Then.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And also, what about websites or anything like that? People want to see more of your work.
I do have one, yes. It's jennifer-williams.com.
Right.
There's a lot of Jennifer Williamses that are artists out there.
Right,
So
right.
if you don't put the dash in, you'll get all kinds of things.
And Instagram also, or not so much?
Not so much. It's
Okay.
mostly food photos on Instagram.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll take a look.
Okay. Okay, Tommy, anything coming up? Any new shows, installations, and where can people find your work?
So I do have a show coming up in late April, May at the Hudson Guild Gallery on 26th Street. And actually, in their lobby space, I do have a print on public display. So
okay.
26th between 9th and 10th, the Hudson Guild Community Center.
And a lot of your work of this series anyway, is shot in the neighborhood in Chelsea, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's
And
fitting.
Flower District.
Right.
Greenwich Village.
Right. Yeah. Cool. All right. And just continuing working on this. I mean, this has been a long-term project, taking many different forms, right?
Yeah, it's
And-
evolved. It's taken longer than I ever expected it to. I mean, it's kept my attention
Right.
longer than I ever imagined it would.
Yeah.
And I do have a show coming up scheduled in Hungary, in Budapest, Hungary,
Wow.
in August. I'm not sure what the political situation there is right
Oh,
now. And I was talking about making street photography, and the laws are very different there.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to sort of navigate other places as a artist, whose work might be interpreted very differently there.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm planning on doing a rear projection there of collages that were previously generated in a gallery window with on prints, actually on large transparent prints, and have a projection that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to sort of see how
The different forms it can take.
how it can take, and how I might move away from it soon. I don't know. It's been
See
it's
where
been a
it
while.
goes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, having seen, pieces of it over the past several years, it seems like it's at a great place now. It seems like it's coalescing really well. I don't know.
Thank you.
From
And
what
I do
I've seen
feel like
anyway.
the higher resolution cameras have kept me very interested.
Mm-hmm.
There are these little details on the sidewalk or whatever that are now showing up in the pictures that make for a much richer viewing experience and understanding of the effect.
And if the prints that you expect to make, what kind of size are we talking?
So I'm making metal prints right now. I actually received a grant to make experiments, and I'm experimenting on metal prints from different print suppliers. I tried to make them myself on an Epson 7600. Are you printing on the 7600 still, or did you upgrade?
78.
78.
But it's
yeah.
similar, yeah.
and wasn't happy with the results of inkjet on metal, though there are really interesting products now that you can buy and run through your printer.
Yeah.
The dye sublimation printing facilities are varied and widespread, and I'm just trying to figure out who I want to work with at this point. So I'm going down the list online of different print suppliers. So I've been getting comparison prints that are 20 by 24 or 24 by 30 from each place and seeing how they look. So that's the size. And I'm also planning on printing very large. There are these banner printing facilities that are very inexpensive, actually, for large prints. I'm going to be experimenting with that. I do want to print some of these high-resolution collages very large so you can see the detail, which you really can't otherwise.
Cool. Okay.
And websites?
Oh, I have a website. That's my name, Tommy Mintz.
M-I-N-T-Z.
And I am on Instagram at Tommy Mintz NYC. I have Tommy Mintz, but I forgot my password, so I started Tommy Mintz NYC.
Another one. Me too.
Right, and then Yahoo. I don't know. Anyways, and yeah, I think that's where I often post things to Instagram first, although I've been doing a lot of panoramics and have found that it doesn't translate well to the Instagram experience. So my website actually has more.
And also,
work.
you've made some GIFs out of these automated digital collages.
Yes.
And those are pretty cool.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And that's actually what I'm thinking about rear projecting in Budapest.
I could see that.
going on.
Great. And for folks, take a look at the B&H Explorer website. We'll have a few examples of their work up to get a sense of it, and definitely check out their sites and Robert Mann Gallery, Hudson Guild for shows.
Yep. Imagery out of the box. No two ways about it. Out of the square and rectangle as well, I might add, in most cases. Okay. If you are not a subscriber to the B&H Photography Podcast, what you waiting for? It is free, it is informative, and from what we hear, it's entertaining. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Overcast, Spotify, and you can always find us online at the B&H Explorer website, and coming soon, our new Facebook page. Stay tuned for details. For now, on behalf of Jason, John, and myself, thank you so much for tuning in today.